I mean, if I had to cope with a 90-day wait before a Disney trip, I would cope by booking another Disney trip even earlier. Hi everybody, and welcome to the Disney Q&A. This is the series in which you guys send me all sorts of Disney-related questions, and I try to answer them to the best of my ability. We've got a great group of questions this week, and so I just want to dive right in. Our first question comes from Actually Adam, who asks, I'm going to Disney in 90 days, and I can't really cope because I'm so excited. Do you have any tips that could help me get through 3 months of waiting? I feel like everybody goes to Disney and is a big Disney fan has this sort of shared trouble where, you know, the trip is close enough that you can feel it, but it's still so far that it's just weeks and weeks and you don't know how to cope with it. I found that over the years, my coping mechanisms changed a little bit. You know, when I was younger, I actually don't remember having to cope with it at all. It was just sort of, there's so much cool kid stuff going on in my life that I was like, Disney trips creeped up on me. But then as I got older and I got like a day job, then yeah, I totally can feel like the wait. You know, I've got my next trip is already sort of planned for January of 2017, which is months and months and months away. And it just feels like it's forever and I don't know how I'm going to deal with it. I mean, one of the things that I like to do, especially in the few weeks before a trip when I'm really getting excited, when all the planning is done and you can't really plan anymore, is I like to listen to a lot of like the background loop cue music around the parks. There's a great website called DCOT. It's d-cot.com. It's sort of like a social network for Disney fans. I don't use it so much for the social network stuff, but what they do have, which is really cool, is this like really expansive jukebox of like Disney park music. Disneyland, Disney World, I think they do some of the international Disneys. And so I'll like load that up while I'm at work and I'll just put on some like either ride loops or lines or area loops. And it just gets me in that mood to, you know, it passes time. It makes me happy for the fact that there's a trip coming up, things like that. Otherwise, it's just a matter of really just putting it out of your mind as much as possible. Like I like to live my life a couple of weeks at a time. Much like Vin Diesel in Fast and Furious, he likes to live a quarter mile at a time. I like to live a few weeks at a time. I think about what's coming up in the next week or two that is exciting me, whether it's somebody visiting or a new video game coming out. And so, you know, I almost try to not get excited for the Disney trip at all until it's like a week or two away. Everyone's going to have their own way to cope. And so I'm going to actually turn this question around and ask you guys in the comments, what is your personal way of coping when you're waiting for a trip to start? Do you have a ritual that you stick to, or maybe there's something that really helps get it off your mind? Let us know in the comments below and maybe we could help them out. Our next question comes from Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 is epic, and it's actually based on a rumor that's going around right now that who knows by the time this is out might actually be confirmed, and that is, what are your thoughts on the rumors of the Tower of Terror in Disney's California Adventure becoming a Guardians of the Galaxy ride? So if you haven't heard this rumor, what's going around is this rumor that they are going to retheme Tower of Terror over in California to be Guardians of the Galaxy themed. And then this rumor is sort of paired with the rumor that the Bugs Life area right next to the Tower of Terror is going to be rethemed into a Marvel-centric land, because over in California, they can do Marvel attractions. And so for that reason, one, if you're like a Florida fan, you don't have to worry. They're not going to be retheming this against Guardians of the Galaxy. We don't even know if this rumor is actually going to be true. That said, I'm okay. I'm okay with it. I'm for it. You know, a lot of people have sort of raised arguments against it that I think just sort of don't work. You know, some people would like to talk about how, you know, Tower of Terror is sort of a Disney classic, but we have to remember that it's based on the Twilight Zone, which Disney doesn't even own. It's not a Disney property. It's just something that was licensed. You know, as far as a classic goes, that's completely relative. You know, what, it opened in 96 or 97, maybe 94, early 90s in California, late 90s in... No, sorry, early 90s in Florida, late 90s in California. So relatively speaking, it's only like about 20 years old, which I think if you think of Disneyland as, you know, 1955's opening, that's not really that classic in the long run. And on top of that, as long as there's a version of it somewhere, which there would be in Florida, then I don't think it's that bad of an idea. Now, I think a lot of people don't like the idea because they think retheming is just a lazy way of doing it. I wonder if they are under the impression that a retheme of this would essentially be just reskinning it the way they sort of do a Nightmare Before Christmas version of the Haunted Mansion, where it's the same ride but with just some thrown in elements. But I don't think that's what it would be. I think if they were going to be doing this, it would be a little more substantial. It's not like it would be a haunted hotel in space or anything like that. I think they would try and come up with something that is really, truly original that just keeps the ride mechanic and the building infrastructure intact. And I think having to do that with that restriction is far more creative than just starting with a blank slate. And on top of that, I'm sort of looking to see Disney do something Marvel related, and I think California is a great place for them to do it because they can do it there and it's still somewhere in the States. So a lot of us can just go and visit it. And so if this is the way to kick it off, I'm all for it, and maybe I'm biased because I'm more of a Florida fan in general, and I also liked the Florida Tower of Terror much more than the California Tower of Terror. So I don't feel like I'm losing something precious, but I kind of think it's an okay thing to do. Our next question is one heck of a question. It comes from Mr. Sweeney Todd 01, who asks, I was watching Bambi again the other day, and I remember hearing that Walt's favorite movie was Bambi. I heard stories that it was because of the coloring techniques they used, or it might have been because of the theme of the movie. But do you think it might have been because Bambi's father, the stern, authoritative, respected leader, reminded him so much of his old man Elias? Furthermore, how do you think Walt's relationship with his father affected some of the character relationships he had in his movies and his work in general? This is a fantastic question because it does delve into his childhood and the relationship he did have with his dad. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of hard facts about this because, while he was willing to talk about his dad and while we do know what his childhood was like with his dad, he was never outgoing when it came to his motivations to do certain things. And I think part of that's because he wanted to keep it private. I think part of that is because when we're motivated by things like our past relationships with parents, it's not something we're necessarily thinking of in the forefront of our mind. It's sometimes a subconscious thing. As far as relationships within the movies, if you've seen Saving Mr. Banks, there's obviously a scene in there that really heavily implies that the character of Mr. Banks is based or altered to be based a little bit on Elias. Who knows if that's true or not? There's certainly those similarities there. But I think anybody who's read the biography of Walt Disney, I don't think it's a stretch to say that his entire life's work, to an extent, is the result of his relationship with his father in both a good way and a bad way. For one, he had a work ethic that I think was just completely, unbreakable and amazing. And I think a lot of that came from the fact that his father growing up was very hard on his kids and making them do a lot of work. The big famous story is that when he was a kid, he had a paper route with his brother, and it involved him getting up really early in the morning, in the winters, going out, delivering newspapers, going to school, and then coming home to deliver the evening edition of the papers. And so he was working all the time. And, the books and the biographies about Walt sort of go into detail about how, it wasn't just a matter of just getting the job done, but doing it well. That was something that was instilled into him by Elias. For instance, they could have just, during a snowstorm, thrown the paper up on the porches. But one of the things his father would make him do is go up the steps, go put it in between, the outer door and the inner door so the paper wouldn't get wet. And, it was just that level of, if you're going to do something, you're going to do it the right way. And we see that. We see that through the parks. We see that in the movies, and everything Disney did during his time, running that company was there was this attention to detail that even if the average person, consuming the service, whether it was a movie or a park, didn't notice it, the people making it notice it. And that's what made it important. On top of that, I think having such a having such a childhood that was so devoid of fun, I think probably played a big part in the fact that he went on to make these whimsical cartoons and movies and theme parks. And, maybe it was him making up for years and years of lost time of having a childhood, or maybe it was just a way of making sure kids in the future were able to have a childhood without having to worry too much about, the realities of working all the time. I mean, it's one of those things that's going to be a mystery ultimately. We're never going to know what his motivations were, or how they were affected by his relationship with his father. father, but I think we could see enough parts and link them together to make an educated guess that, Elias, in all sorts of manners, had a really big impact on his life. Our next question comes from Micah Calhoun, who asks, "Hey Rob, I just got back from Disney about a week and a half ago, and I noticed the construction of Pandora in the Animal Kingdom. Do you think that the movie still has a following, and do you think it will live up to what the Imagineers are saying about the new area?" For your second part of that question, will it live up to the Imagineers, and how they're selling it? I hope so, right? We have no way of knowing at the end of the day. Sometimes attractions meet and exceed their expectations. Sometimes they fall a little bit short. I would like to think Imagineering is as good as it's ever been, and it'll totally exceed what we're imagining. This is sort of a offshoot to that, but I just recently saw a video of the Pirates of the Caribbean over in Shanghai Disney, and the technology they used in that is incredible. And I think we haven't seen new and sort of groundbreaking technology used in an American Disney park in quite a while. And so I have a feeling some of these new attractions coming to Pandora, coming to Star Wars Land, Toy Story Land, are going to be like mind-blowing to us. I think we're going to see, a very large leap in technological fidelity there. As for your first question about the popularity of Avatar, of course, again, we're never really going to know, but I think it's important to remember that this isn't being just based on the one movie. James Cameron announced he's working on Avatar 2, 3, and 4 back-to-back and is going to be releasing them. So, assuming that this park is opening up around the time that those movies are coming out, Avatar is going to be out in the news again. It's going to be in people's minds again. How much they cling on to it is a very good question. And, I don't think we've ever really seen an instance where a studio has committed to making an entire trilogy without knowing if it's going to do well. I think the last time we did that was like Lord of the Rings, and it was amazing. I don't think we've seen an instance of where that happened and then the movies all flopped and they were just committed to 3 flops. But I think there's also an important element of separating the movie from the area, right? So even if the movies come out and they're not great, that doesn't necessarily mean the area is not going to be great. Maybe, we won't have as fond memories for it as if it was something based on what we loved. But, I still think, with a bad movie to base it off of, Imagineers could create some fun rides. So I'm really excited for when it opens. I'm definitely going to make a trip down when it does so I can check out all the new stuff. And hopefully it'll be really cool. And our last question this week comes from The Carton, who asks, "Universal has recently sunk a large amount of money into the new wizarding world of Harry Potter Land in their Hollywood park after its enormous success in Orlando. I recently read an article saying that if this project tanks in Hollywood, Universal theme parks as a company could go under. I doubt this will happen given the phenomenon that Harry Potter is, but let's say hypothetically Universal theme parks were to go under and they're forced to shut down all of their parks around the world. What would this mean for Disney? Should we as Disney fans want this to happen? Does Disney want this to happen?" A lot of great questions there, a lot of great speculation. I'd actually be very wary to believe that sort of implication that if this one new part of Universal in California doesn't work, that they're going to shut them all down. That's not really how these business units work. Even though they all might fall under one umbrella company, they all sort of still operate on their own. It might mean that they won't expand elsewhere for a really long time because they just sunk too much money and they didn't get a return. But I highly doubt it would, even if the area flopped, I highly doubt it would lead to all these parks closing. But you posed a hypothetical. Let's talk about this hypothetical. What would it mean for Disney? It would probably be a good thing for Disney, but not a good thing for us. And by that, what I mean is, Disney as a company, they want to create as much revenue as they can. They want people coming to their parks. And so, for all of their main competitors to shut down Universal Orlando and Hollywood and around the world, that would be great for Disney's bottom line, because now people would have to go to Disney if they wanted to go to a theme park in, Florida. Of course, you've got the even smaller ones like a Busch Gardens or a Six Flags, but I think they're in sort of a lower tier there. So I think from a financial standpoint, it would be great for Disney. That said, I don't think that means it would be great for us. For one, it's not a mutually exclusive fandom. Just because you like Disney doesn't mean you can't like Universal. There are plenty of people out there who love both. And so it's a bummer if they were ever in a position where they can no longer enjoy Universal Studios. That wouldn't somehow make a better experience for them, right? That's just one less thing they get to have fun with. On top of that, not having competition in a marketplace is never really a great thing for the consumer, which would be us in this instance, because then the leader, which would undoubtedly be Disney, has no they have no motivation to keep things great. They have no motivation to keep on the cutting edge of technology or keep things really fun and make people really want to go and visit the parks, because why? Where else are you going to go? Like, you're going to go to Disney because that's your only real option. And so I think from that perspective, it would be pretty bad for us because, you know, you can almost wonder if Star Wars Land and Toy Story Land and Pandora, if all these places would happen on the scale and the level of excitement that they are happening, if we didn't have the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. That sort of really came up out of nowhere and sort of, you know, took that whole area by storm, and people are just talking about how great it is. I have so many friends who want to go check it out and visit it, and that keeps Disney on their toes. They have to compete, and that's always good for us on the bottom line. And that, you know, extends to like any sort of, you know, company competition. That's why I've never wanted to see a Sony or Xbox fail or Nintendo fail in the video game space. It's why you never want to see one studio fall apart. I don't want to see like DC movies do poorly and Marvel movies do great, because again, once you have a clear winner and that competition goes away, so does the motivation to keep creating the best products you can. So hopefully it never happens. I don't think it would happen, so I don't think we really have anything to worry about. Anyway, I want to thank you all for your great questions this week. Some really, really good ones. I really was a fan of like the Elias one and the Universal Studios one. If you have a question that you would like to ask, feel free to leave it in the comments below, along with your answer as to how you cope when you have a Disney trip coming up. Or you can ask me on Twitter. I'm at RobPlays. I'm going to thank you all for watching. Whatever you're doing this week, make the most of it. It makes it that much better. If you want to see more Disney videos, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button. I do one a week, sometimes two a week. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time for the next Disney Q&A. Bye, everybody. 2 rides enter, 1 ride comes out alive. That's right. You're going to vote in the cards, and the winner will continue on while the loser gets deconstructed officially by Disney. Destroyed, wiped off the face of the earth.
That's like some heavy power.
Yeah, I pulled some strings and called in some favors, and this series now has more weight than anything I've ever done before.